Alrighty, welcome back to the 3-4 swap of a 4runner. So, project I'm thinking about for today is to make my exhaust manifold crossover. So the 3-4s exit on the passenger side of the vehicle as where the 3 liters exit on the driver's side. So I'm gonna have to build a new exhaust crossover to match it. There are options out there for sale, but they're about $400, and you know, I'm on a budget and I have enough pieces here laying around to make what I need. So gonna take my 3-4 crossover that came off the bad engine and make it into my crossover for this. That's gonna be on the new engine once I get that on Thursday. So I went and grabbed the exhaust off of the parts truck out there. We're gonna delete that thingy. Don't look at that, it wasn't there. So, and then I got all these parts last night off of there, which you've probably seen in the last few videos. So yeah, I'm gonna get the heads bolted back on this thing so I can mock up the exhaust and hopefully get that all figured out for today. And then after that, gonna start going through here and getting rid of the factory harness for the 3 liter. That way we can fish the 3-4 harness in there, and I'll start doing my merge this week. That way when I get the motor on Thursday, we can just get it right in here after we re-gasket it. So that's the plan. There we go, heads were crudely bolted back on with an impact. So time to start playing around with this. And the more I was looking at it, I realized, darn it, 2 of the studs are broke off. So now I get to play around with getting those out first so that we know that this is even worth dealing with. Because sadly, on my parts truck, I just went out there and cut this one off, so that crossover is now junk. But oh well. And it's got a stripped out bolt. This is why I cut it off, because I just went out there with my impact to take it off and stripped that one off, got that one off. Actually the end lost its threads and snapped that side off. So oh well, doesn't matter because I'm only after this chunk really, which isn't even in that great a shape. But yeah, I don't know, we'll see what we can use off of it. I at least need the flange and the down to here, and then I could make whatever I want for my O2 sensors in that exhaust. So we'll see. I really did just want to use that factory piece there, but I realized my 3 liter comes out of the header and just has a big cast piece coming off of it. So kind of tricky to reuse and make on this. So here's what the factory 3-4 manifold looks like on the engine. This flange needs to get moved over to here. So I'm kind of thinking what's going to happen is cutting the weld completely off up here, because when I was holding it up over here, the flange does not line up. So it would actually be like up, pointing right side up. So I'm going to cut that flange off, and from the form write-up I was reading, the guy left the lower piece here, cut it off here, rotated this one to how he needed it, cut the crossover tube off, and then started rebuilding it off of there to come across here. So gonna get this all in the vise and start cutting and hacking. Also get this heat shield taken off of here so we can see what we're working with. So well, after a few hours of drilling and punching, finally got all the studs out. I decided if I was getting the 2 out, I might as well get the 3, make it all bolts, and never worry about this happening again. So finally it's time to start cutting it apart. So got everything cut apart, ready to go. I will say, this flex has seen better days, but no signs of an actual leak, just everything around it has fallen off and is inside the heat shield, but oh well. We're just gonna continue to move on, and if that becomes an issue, I will, well, future Zach will hate me, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So now I can start mocking these up. Got this one cut so that I can still keep this flange out of here, and I can just use the weld as my depth and pivot it around. So luckily, this one here can now just slip right on there. And this guy can just come in right here. I can get it back in there. Just like that. And then our pipe is going to come up through the back here and connect to it somehow. So wish me luck on what I figure out. Got my outlet welded on. That took a little bit of figuring out how I wanted it, from going over to the 4runner and kind of judging. Luckily, this one doesn't have much wiggle room. I figured it probably hangs up about there, and when I put my hand in there, it's roughly just about the width of my hand. So I came over here, and that's what I roughly did here, was going off the nub of the transmission mount here. Well, not transmission mount, the engine stand mount. I kind of use that as my rough guess of where my bell housing would be, because it sticks out a little bit past. So I used that with the width of my hand, got it tacked in there, and was also holding my I guess you'd call it a downpipe, which I don't expect to use this back half with this flange. I'm probably going to cut it off about here, make a new mount for the O2, move it up to the top right here, because for what it sounds like, the O2 hits the frame, but we will see. This one's also not in the best of shape, so I'll probably make my own something for that. But cross that bridge when we get there. So next up is to start modifying the crossover, and I'm holding it up with it flipped at the moment and just kind of playing with it. So, well, not that I'm showing you. So, been holding it up and playing with it and figuring it out. I think I'm going to cut myself. I don't know really where I want to cut it yet, so I'll catch up with you when I make that decision. Gotta say, I am very, very proud of my handiwork on this one. I think that sucker fits pretty nice. These two pipes here are touching, but that's kind of how it has to be for it to work. But man, got good clearance up around the back there. Plenty of clearance along the bell housing. I gotta say, I'm pretty proud of myself for that one. Gonna go inside and get something to eat and then come back out and get this sucker all welded up. But man, that turned out pretty good. That is way better than spending $400, I will say that. I don't really remember what pieces all ended up being what. The flex here is flipped around from what it originally was. And okay, so yeah, that's right. So this was the right hand piece and this was the left hand piece. I flipped everything around, and obviously with a bit of trimming and hacking. And then this piece here actually ended up being off of my extra flange that I cut off the other truck. It was the perfect bend to meet up with my flex here. So if you're gonna do this, it might be best to have a couple extra pieces. Otherwise, I'm sure you could just run like a straight to connect these. But since I had that, got that cut out and fit in there perfect. So yeah, there's basically nothing left now. Just got to get her all welded up. finally got my welds cleaned up. Came out a lot better the second time around. Still a little fat and chunky around there, but hey, I know she's gonna hold. She's not just gonna crack and fall off, so. Very happy with how that turned out. Got her bolted on there so she can cool off. It's not warped at all. I welded most of it on there, so that is good to go. It'll be ready for when I get the new engine. Next step, pulling the old harness out of the 4runner, so might as well jump right into it. And that there be our whole 3-liter wiring harness. Gonna keep this out still. I believe these plugs here, no, I shouldn't need any of the ECU plugs, but these two here go to some of my body controls, like my cluster and whatnot, so probably gonna cut these two pigtails off so I can make a jumper harness out of part of the 3-4 harness. And then this section here runs to the rear. This one here is an O2 sensor for the OBD1, so probably not going to need that. But this here plugs into some of the stuff on the transmission. I believe this farthest back one is actually my speed sensor. So probably going to have to look at how to merge that into the 3-4 harness, but overall pretty minor details. Gonna hopefully print off some wiring diagrams at work tomorrow so that I can start getting the 3-4 harness mocked up in here so that it's ready to go. Definitely nice though. I was able to get rid of all the vacuum lines that were in this passenger side fender well. The only thing I needed to keep is these controls here, which run down to my front diff and everything for the 4-wheel drive. So just got to hook this one here up to my intake, and hopefully our 4-wheel drive stuff should all work. So any luck? And yeah, the manifold turned out great, or I keep calling it the manifold crossover. Maybe you could consider it. I don't know. Either way, the crossover pipe turned out great. The welds are, you know, mediocre at best, but she's going to hold. I don't think it's going to leak too bad. If it does, we can, well, deal with it, and when the motor comes out someday, I'll fix it then. But for now, I am very happy with how that turned out fitment-wise. It was really worth the time I took to do it because that just saved me $400. So, gonna start moving along with wiring tomorrow. So, stay tuned for it. I'll hopefully have this 4runner swapped to a 3-4 here within the next week.